Hello. So, breaking news: Wes Streeting has just resigned, and there is going to be a leadership challenge. Um, let's have a look in a sec. I'll just push play on here. But I heard somewhere else as well. If Wes Streeting does do a leadership challenge, which it's going to be, I heard that Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner are also going to do a challenge also. Um, hopefully, I mean, I'd rather Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner rather than Streeting. But let's have a look and see what they're saying anyway.
Joining us, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has resigned in a letter to the Prime Minister, saying it is now clear that you not lead the Labour Party into the next general election. He said that we need vision, and instead we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. We've just had reaction, Beth, from the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, who says, in reaction to this resignation, if Labour thinks Wes Streeting is the answer, they obviously don't know the question the country is asking. Last week's elections show that the country is crying out for a break from the failed status quo. His argument seems to be there: Wes Streeting, Sir Keir Starmer, cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about this, though, is that the fact that Wes Streeting is saying that we need to have a broad contest is a nod to the reality that he's facing, which is Labour MPs do not want to have this contest without a number of different options. And now,
Yeah, no, he's right, and they are cut from the same cloth. I mean, personally, I think Wes Streeting he's blue Labour. He's very conservative in his thinking, most definitely. And no, Labour should not be doing this. You're basically feeding into the right-wing rhetoric. You know, it's just ridiculous.
I'm waiting to see what Andy Burnham does and whether or not Andy Burnham now, we were potentially going to hear from him today.
Nothing
whether
Andy Burnham can do.
now tries to throw his hat in the ring. There's been lots of talk
but
that
he's not
there
an
is a
MP.
seat
How can he?
somewhere that someone is willing to give up to let Andy Burnham
doubt
back
they will.
into Parliament. A lot of Burnham allies were saying on Friday and over the weekend,
If someone gives up their seat for Andy Burnham, their political career is over. It's over. So who's willing to give up their career for Andy Burnham to have a career?
that they wanted a timetable for Starmer's departure, that they could select a new leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister at Labour Party conference at the end of September. But the point is, Keir Starmer has consistently said, I am not going anywhere. You need to trigger a formal formal contest.
That's what he said at the start of his cabinet meeting, wasn't it?
And until that happens, I imagine that Keir Starmer will dig in. I'm looking also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if it's just Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer will win, because what a lot of people, what the news is failing to report on, is that more people signed for Keir Starmer to stay than what there was than how many there was to call for his resignation, for him to resign. So I think, and more people, I think, back Keir Starmer than what they do Wes Street.
To see if more of the cabinet now go in and tell Keir Starmer that his time is up, because at the moment we think there are 3, 4 maybe that have privately said that. I mean,
Yeah,
Streeting
I
has
agree with
publicly said that and
Polanski.
resigned.
Streeting
But if the Prime Minister loses his cabinet, then he's really not able to stay on. But the cabinet is divided,
I think Wes
and there have
Streeting's
been
with the wrong
at
political
least
party.
7 cabinet ministers publicly battling
He
and
would suit
battling
being
for
a
him on
Conservative.
camera in the past 3 days.
Beth, thank you for the moment. I'm going to bring in now Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, James Heal. I mean, James, this is the news we've been waiting for the last 48 hours. Wes Streeting handed in his resignation, but stopping short of triggering a leadership contest. Your thoughts on this move?
Well, he may have formally stopped triggering it, but it is a letter laser-focused on the anxieties and insecurities of the Labour members and the Labour MPs. It hits all the right notes, it pays tribute to Keir Starmer's statesmanship on the world stage, acknowledges the difficulties.
New double serum foundation, our next generation hybrid serum foundation. With our unique double serum
reference where he talks about leaders taking responsibility and falling on their sword. And I think that anyone who's worked with or for Keir Starmer will very much resonate with that line. I think it was one that talks about backbench anxieties, the fact they weren't being listened to, and I think it very much shows he's preparing to mount a formal bid. He's clearly used the last 48 hours to prepare himself well, 1,000 words, and you can't imagine it being any better pitched than to the moment at a time when the Labour Party is looking for leadership.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Our political editor, Beth Rigby, pulled this piece out of Wes Streeting's resignation letter, talking about what comes next. Essentially, Wes Streeting saying it needs to be a battle of ideas, not of personalities or petty factionalism. It needs to be broad and it needs to be the best possible field of candidates. What do you think that looks like? Because Zach Polanski, I'm just going back to his statement in response to this. He said at the end of it, the Labour government is failing and is not strong enough to stand up to the greatest threat facing this country, that of a Nigel Farage government. Labour needs to stop trying to mimic them and join the Greens in taking the divisive politics of reform head on.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to look like an incredibly factional partisan battle. You know, Wes Streeting can say that it's not going to be like that, but I think it very much will. And it's going to be Streeting probably versus someone from the soft left and maybe Keir Starmer as well. We'll wait to see what the Cabinet are saying. They've held their fire until now. We're hearing reports of them all trooping in. But, I mean, there is not many figures, I would argue, in the Labour Party considered more factional, unfairly or otherwise, by their colleagues than Wes Streeting. And I think that he is very much going to be marketing himself as the winnable candidate. He's going to point to his election results in Redbridge, suggesting that they can beat both the left and right. They beat some of the independents there, and they also beat the Tories there. And he's saying, look, that's what I've done on my local patch. That's what I can do for the country. And as you say, talking up the threat of reform and making himself clear, he's a winner.
James, it's Beth Rigby here. Just in terms of the letter, were you a bit surprised that Wes Streeting hasn't tried to trigger a contest and now he's saying that there should be a broad battle, even when most people around Westminster would say if Wes gets put to the party membership up against more left-leaning candidates, he cannot win? What do you think's going on?
Yeah, no.
I think a couple of things, one of which
I
is
reckon
you wait for the
against
Cabinet
most
to come
people
out.
he would lose.
You maybe wait for just cover, so it's not just sort of Wes out, strung up on his own. And then I also think potentially there's the temptation to string this out in one sense. I go back to one of the last successful plots to take down a Labour leader, the Curry House plot of 2006. Tom Watson was very clear. He was sort of keeping it strung out for about 48 hours before he resigned as a PPS, allowing maximum coverage, allowing maximum heightened excitement. And it very much seems that Wes Streeting's done the similar thing today. 1 o'clock, he's put this letter announcing he's resigning. And I think that events will very much now take their course. He's got momentum behind him. And as you've been reporting, Beth, today, the Cabinet will probably be echoing a lot of his message in the coming hours and days ahead.
What does a timetable look like? Because when people have been talking about an orderly transition and a timetable, a lot of people have been mentioning Andy Burnham in the same breath. It's quite a long timetable because, Beth, was it September people were talking about? Him coming back in if there's a by-election and there's obviously no certainty he'd win that.
I think Burnham, I think those that are supporting Burnham want a long contest so he can get back into Parliament, and that could take a while. He's got to win a by-election first, find a seat, win a by-election. Yeah. And therefore, could you run out this process so that by September, at the end of September, I think it's the weekend of September the 26th is the Labour Party conference, you could have had the contest and anoint the chosen successor to Starmer at that point. But look, there's so many processes to go through before you get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, James, does that sound realistic to you, dragging out a timetable that long? Because then essentially you have a Prime Minister that many people will see as ineffectual, particularly on the world stage. We were talking about the upcoming schedule of events. There's a G7 summit thrown in. There's lots of NATO. There's lots of world events going on. James, does that sound realistic to you?
I think that it very much fits in with the tradition and culture of the Labour Party. I mean, right now, the thing which has been keeping Keir Starmer in place is there is no agreement about what comes next, and you have various divines about sort of how the replacement should go. Ultimately, there's a lot of moving pieces. There's been a mood change in the NEC. You've had moderates who previously blocked Andy Burnham now suggesting they would change their votes. I don't know exactly, you know, there isn't a kind of Sir Graham Brady Tory party figure in all this. The Labour Party is a very different ecosystem. We await to see how the Cabinet, I think it'll be a much more kind of, we've had the Peasants' revolt in the last few days. Now it's the time of the barons, and if the cabinet make it clear that Keir Starmer should go and he chooses to quit, that will be a very different process, and I think one in which we've got multiple different things. You've obviously got the whips to think about as well. They potentially would move a writ on any by-election. Ultimately, at this stage, it doesn't look like an orderly transition. It might be a prolonged transition, but it currently looks like a fairly disorderly one, I'd say.
James, thank you. James Heal there, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, if you are just joining us. And the news has finally dropped, the news we've been waiting for the last 48 hours, perhaps even longer, it seems. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, resigning his post, but stopping short of directly challenging Sir Keir Starmer for the leadership. He says it is now clear that you, Sir Keir Starmer, will not lead the Labour Party into the next general election, and that Labour MPs and Labour unions want the debate about what comes next to be a battle of ideas, not of personalities or petty factionalism. It needs to be broad and it needs to be the best possible field of candidates. I support that approach and I hope that you will facilitate this, the inference being that there should be a timetable now forthcoming from the Prime Minister for his orderly exit from his post. Let's go to Downing Street. Our political correspondent Lucy McDade standing by. As I said, we have been anticipating this news. What's been the reaction there on Downing Street today?
Well, firstly, the reaction from the weather. We've gone from blue sky to really dark grey clouds over Downing Street. It's now raining and it's bitterly cold down here, so a bit of pathetic fallacy
Weather to
there,
match the
you might
mood.
say. In the past hour and a half or so, we saw Steve Reid, the Housing Secretary, go into number 10, wasn't answering any questions, but we know very loyal to the Prime Minister. It actually turns out him and Keir Starmer are now off on a pre-arranged housing visit together. So the Prime Minister and some of his cabinet there trying to, get on with the job. It was a roll of thunder above me then. There's a storm really brewing here, not just outside Downing Street, but inside Downing Street as well. Steve Reid and Keir Starmer on a housing visit, though. As I say, Steve Reid very loyal to Keir Starmer. We know as well this morning that even just a couple of hours ago, the Prime Minister's official spokesperson was telling journalists that the Prime Minister plans on remaining in the job. He is resolute. We saw Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, speaking to journalists also this morning, saying that a leadership challenge is the last thing that this country needs. I know from speaking to MPs that she and others have been rallying around, trying to make sure that the Prime Minister has as much support as possible. I think now, as you and Beth have just been discussing, we are kind of looking to see which cars are arriving to number 10, which cabinet ministers, if any, will be walking in to number 10 to have those important conversations. Perhaps when the Prime Minister returns from whatever visit he's on, we will know more about that. As it stands, we are looking at numbers, just to update you. I mean, about 114, I think, is the latest count of Labour backbenchers that have signed this letter expressing their support for Keir Starmer. The Sky tally, I think, is now approaching 90 MPs that have come out publicly saying that they think he should stand down. But, of course, now Wes Streeting, the most senior figure so far to now make that call that the Prime Minister should be going. It is all in a state of flux. So I've had a number of conversations with backbench MPs today, one even just 15 or so minutes ago, just as that news about Wes Streeting came in. I think saying something that will resonate with a lot of MPs that have been quite silent over this is that they don't want anything to do with it. They don't necessarily believe that Keir Starmer should be the Prime Minister. They think the party needs a whole new direction, but they still don't feel particularly passionate about any of the other names that are being circulated. And I think whatever happens with this, if there is a leadership contest, there are huge problems that the Labour Party needs to address. Many, ultimately, really, really conscious about what this looks like to the public. Voters that clearly feel disillusioned with mainstream politicians, with Labour, as we saw with the local election results. What does this mean? Whoever comes in, can they really bring together a party that is clearly very, very divided?
That's it. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. There's going to be more of this coming out, I'm sure, but not the right direction for Labour to go in. Definitely not. He should go, but let's do it right, and that's how it should be. Totally. Okay, I'll make another video in a little while when there's more news coming out about it, because it is literally just happened not that long ago. And yeah, hit that like and subscribe. Peace.